Nolan lifts the copper lid from my cider-glazed trout and presents my menu as his own. He talks about my seasonal philosophy, while 12 people from Ellery Retreats taste the dairy-free glaze I rebuilt 6 times. When their regional director asks who developed the courses, Nolan points his carving knife toward me. "She only chopped what I told her," he says. The room applauds because he has made it sound like a joke. I let him present every allergy-safe course: the rice-thickened ragu, the nut-free pear cake, the sorghum rolls he once called expensive doorstops. Then Ellery's auditor opens the gray allergy binder beside him. Graham Sloan turns to the first marked page. My signed test sheet waits inside the clear sleeve. Blue grease pencil pressed so hard into the paper that my name is readable from the other side. He looks at the sheet, then at Nolan. "Chef Voss," he says, "why is Maribel's signature on your development record?" Across the kitchen, my mother is standing beside the receiving door with a folded invoice in her hand. Her face tells me she has finally chosen a side. I just don't know what it cost her. 14 weeks earlier, the gray binder was empty. It sat on the corner of my prep table at the Briarwood Hotel with AL7 written on the spine in Lorraine Bell's block handwriting. My mother labeled everything as if she expected the building to survive a flood and wanted the insurance adjuster to know which stapler belonged to banquets. "You put the 7 too close to the dash," I told her. "I put it where it fit. It looks like allergy-70. If we ever host 70 allergies, I'm retiring in the linen cart." She gave the binder a firm shove across the stainless steel. It stopped against my cutting board. Lorraine ran, receiving from 6 in the morning until 2:30, which meant every carrot wine bottle, frozen tart shell, and suspiciously damp box of parsley passed under her eyes. Vendors were afraid of her. Line cooks loved her because she kept protein drinks in the bottom drawer of her desk and pretended not to notice when they took one. She was 5'4" in non-slip shoes and could make a delivery driver reconsider his entire morning by saying, "Would you like to look at that temperature again?" I opened the binder. Numbered dividers, clear sleeves, test logs in the front pocket. "Nice," I said. "You're welcome." I didn't thank you. "You said nice. At your age, that counts." She checked the clock over the dish pit. "You eating at home tonight?" "If I get out." "You keep saying that like the hotel has locked the doors." "The hotel has Nolan. That man locks doors from the inside." She said it lightly, but her mouth tightened when the executive kitchen door swung open. Nolan Voss came through carrying 2 coffees and a stack of printed emails. He was built like a former college linebacker who had discovered expensive tailoring. Even in chef whites, he looked pressed. The cuffs stayed clean. His black apron never picked up flour. He had the irritating gift of walking into a kitchen during a crisis and immediately locating both the problem and the person most likely to fix it. "Mara," he said, setting one coffee beside me. "Conference room in 10. Lorraine looked at the cup. He brought you coffee. He wants something. He knows your order. He wants something difficult." Nolan turned at the office door. "Lorraine, your daughter always this grateful?" "Only when she suspects a felony." He laughed. He liked my mother because she didn't report to him. When he disappeared, Lorraine lifted the cup and read the label. "Oat milk, 2 shots, no sweetener." "I know my coffee." "I'm saying he does too." I took the cup from her. "Go reject a melon." "Already did." Soft at the stem. The Briarwood had spent most of its life as the kind of downtown hotel where people held retirement dinners, association lunches, and weddings planned around the ballroom carpet. The carpet was burgundy with gold loops that could hide red wine, coffee, or a moderate crime scene. Our banquet department was busy, but busy did not mean profitable. We could feed 400 accountants chicken piccata without blinking. We just couldn't charge enough to make ownership happy. Ellery Retreats could change that. Their company ran executive wellness programs at 6 wooded properties across the Northeast. They needed a hotel partner near the airport for leadership sessions, medical conferences, and overflow events. The initial contract was worth enough to renovate our lower kitchen. If the first year worked, Briarwood would become Ellery's regional production hub. Nolan stood at the conference table beside a screen filled with photographs of moss, ceramic bowls, and very serious-looking radishes. Ellery doesn't want hotel food, he said. They want food that tells guests they've made a healthy decision without punishing them for it. Tessa Monroe, my lead line cook, leaned toward me. So butter, but in the dark? I covered a cough. Nolan heard her. He heard everything. Exactly, Tessa, except no butter. He clicked to a spreadsheet. 24 menu combinations, vegan options, gluten-free options, 6 priority allergens excluded from core dishes with controlled add-ons for everyone else. Then he looked at me. I need you to build the safety architecture. That phrase was why he had brought the coffee. What does architecture include? I asked. Recipes, substitutions, cross-contact procedures, supplier documentation. Priya Desai, their consulting dietitian, will audit the process. And menu development? We'll collaborate. Tessa made a small noise that could have been a laugh or a hiccup. I kept my eyes on Nolan. Who signs the tests? You do. Priya wants one accountable person. Accountable for the tests or the menu? The tests. There it was, wrapped neatly enough to pass as an answer. Nolan clicked to the next slide. I'll lead the creative. You'll make sure it works in a real kitchen. He was good at saying things that sounded respectful until you carried them home. Still, I wanted the work. For 2 years, I had been banquet sous-chef, which meant I knew how many portions of salmon could sit in a hot box before the edges turned chalky, and which service elevator groaned before stopping between floors. I could rescue a broken hollandaise in a hotel pan. I could turn 60 extra attendees into 60 plates without making the sales manager cry where clients could see her. What I did not have was a title that covered the work Nolan quietly gave me whenever allergies made him nervous. What's the deadline? I asked. His smile arrived fast. Draft tasting in 3 weeks. That's not a deadline, that's an ambush. That's why I bought 2 shots. After the meeting, Tessa followed me into the kitchen. She was narrow-shouldered, quick-handed, and unable to conceal any opinion for longer than 30 seconds. She picked up the empty binder and flipped through the sleeves. Safety architecture, she said. Do we get little hard hats? We get labels. Can mine say structural garnish engineer? You can be deputy parsley. I've been doing deputy parsley work for years. I took the binder from her. We start with the core menu. 1 sauce, 1 soup, 2 mains, 2 desserts. If the base is clean, add-ons stay separate. You say clean like there's a crime. In this kitchen, there's always a crime. She reached for Nolan's concept packet. Cedar plank trout with brown butter cider glaze. No butter. Chef wrote brown butter. Chef also wrote 6 priority allergens excluded. So we discover philosophical oat butter. No, we make something better. That first week, I lived inside substitutions. I toasted apple peels until they went dark at the edges, steeped them with cider, and reduced the liquid until it picked up the bitter depth Nolan wanted from browned milk solids. Tessa tried the 3rd version and stared into the spoon. That's rude, she said. What is? That it tastes this good after what you did to those peels. The mushroom ragu was worse. Nolan wanted it glossy and rich without cream, wheat flour, soy, or the gummy finish of standard gluten-free starch. I tried potato starch, too elastic, cornstarch, too shiny. Arrowroot broke when held for service. Lorraine found me at 9 one night, standing over 3 pans of mushrooms. She put her purse on the prep table. Which one ruined your life? All of them. She tasted the first with a plastic spoon. You make this one at home. It's glue. I like glue. You ate at the cafe for 28 years. Your standards are damaged. Her eyes moved to the stack of test sheets beside the binder. Each page had the date, ingredient list, supplier code, method, holding time, sanitation notes, and signature lines. You're filling those out for failed batches? Failed batches are the point. Most people only document the thing that worked. Most people don't get asked why the thing that worked changed. She stopped tasting. The kitchen hummed around us. Compressor fan, ice machine, the soft click of the warming cabinet settling. Lorraine knew what I meant. At my previous hotel, a bottled chili sauce had arrived with a new formula and an almost identical label. Sesame moved from a facility warning into the ingredient list. I checked the case against the purchase order, not the new label. A conference guest used an epinephrine injector before the paramedics arrived. He recovered. The hotel wrote me up anyway, and they should have. For months afterward, I woke with the image of that bottle turned sideways in my hand. Lorraine tapped the failed test sheets into a square stack. Then keep everything. I plan to. And don't let anybody rush your initials. I know. I'm your mother. I'm allowed to repeat useful things until they become irritating. They became irritating around 1998. That late? She smiled, but before she left, she took a blue grease pencil from the receiving pocket of her cardigan and set it on the binder. Regular pens smear on those sleeves, she said. The breakthrough on the ragu came from toasted rice flour, but not the fine commercial kind Nolan had ordered. I ground broken jasmine rice from banquets, toasted it slowly in a dry pan, then whisked it into mushroom stock. It held for 40 minutes without turning pasty. Priya Desai arrived during the test wearing a navy blazer over kitchen clogs. She asked better questions than most chefs. Why jasmine? Cleaner finish than brown rice, less gritty than sorghum. Why not purchase pre-ground? Different grind size. I need it coarse enough to toast without scorching. She tasted, waited, then tasted again. Nolan developed this? Tessa looked at me. I said, it came out of his brown butter ragu concept. Priya's gaze stayed on my face a second longer than was comfortable. That wasn't what I asked. Before I could answer, Nolan swept in from the ballroom. How are my mushrooms behaving? Better than most executives, Priya said. He tasted the ragu and immediately identified what mattered. Good body, deep finish. We played it with roasted maitake, something green, maybe charred scallion oil. Scallion oil works, I said. Dedicated blender, though. The main blender gets the sesame vinaigrette. Fine. Priya slid the test sheet toward me. Document the approved version. Nolan took the pen from beside her hand. I'll sign. Priya put one finger on the paper. Mara ran the test. A pause opened between them. Nolan smiled and handed me the pen. Of course she did. I used Lorraine's blue grease pencil instead. Mara Bell, banquet sous-chef. Under my name, Priya signed as witness. Nolan watched the pencil move. That afternoon, he asked me into his office and closed the door. You don't need to be territorial with Priya, I answered her question. You almost did. I folded my arms. What answer did you want? The answer where we're a team. Teams usually know who did what. His expression didn't harden. Nolan was too disciplined for that. You're excellent at the technical side, Mara, but Ellery is buying a vision. They need one voice. Yours, the executive chef's. That's how clients understand kitchens. He leaned back, studying me as if I were a sauce that had thickened unexpectedly. If this contract lands, there will be opportunities. Don't make credit the reason you miss yours. It sounded like advice. That was another thing Nolan did well. When I returned to the prep kitchen, the gray binder was gone. I found it 10 minutes later in his office, tucked beneath the Ellery presentation deck. The approved ragu sheet was still inside, but Nolan had added a typed cover page. Seasonal Menu Concepts by Executive Chef Nolan Voss. My blue signature showed faintly through the paper underneath. I carried the binder back to my station. Tessa looked from it to my face. Should I ask? Not yet. That evening, I added the trout trials behind divider 2 and numbered every sheet in grease pencil at the bottom right corner, 1 through 9. Then I wrote the same numbers on the corresponding supplier labels and receiving copies. It was ordinary work, the kind Lorraine had taught me to do, before I understood how often ordinary work becomes the only honest witness in the room. At 6:30 the next morning, the number on sheet 4 had a thumbprint through it. Nolan stood at my station with the binder open and Lorraine's grease pencil in his hand. "You're numbering drafts now?" "I'm numbering tests. Priya only needs approved formulas." She asked for the development record. She asked for traceability. That's the record. He looked at the failed cider glaze sheets. On trial 2, I had written bitter after 20-minute hold in capital letters. Trial 5 said, good flavor, breaks under heat. There was nothing elegant about the pages. They showed waste, wrong turns, and my handwriting getting worse as each day ran longer. Nolan flipped to the ragu approval. This one stays. The failures go in your working file. Why? Because an auditor doesn't need to watch us learn how to cook. She needs to know why the substitutions were chosen. She needs confidence. He tapped the grease pencil against the rings. A small blue crescent appeared on his cuff. "You're building a liability museum, Mara." "I'm building a test history. Move the rejected versions. Ask Priya." He set the pencil down very carefully. "I shouldn't need permission from a consultant to organize my own kitchen." "You don't, but her signature is on sheet 9. The blue mark on his cuff had caught his attention. He rubbed at it with his thumb, making it larger. For 1 second, he looked almost humanly annoyed. Then he closed the binder. "Fine, but this does not leave the kitchen. It's the kitchen binder. I know what it is." He walked away with the stain still on his sleeve. Tessa came in through the stewarding corridor, carrying a tray of pears against her hip. "You finally stab him with the pencil?" He stabbed himself. "That feels less satisfying." "Give it time." The pears were for the dessert Nolan had described as rustic but polished, which was how chefs described food when they wanted uneven edges served on expensive plates. His original sketch called for almond frangipani, brown butter cake, and pistachio brittle. I had pointed out that building our core dessert around 3 ingredients we would need to isolate defeated the purpose of a broadly allergy-safe menu. He had drawn a line through all 3 and written, "Mara to solve." For 8 days, I solved badly. Rice flour made the cake sandy. Tapioca gave it the bounce of a kitchen sponge. Oat flour tasted good but carried too much supplier variation for the control plan Priya wanted. A commercial egg replacer produced a batter that looked promising until it rose, sank, and adhered itself to the pan with religious commitment. Tessa turned one failed cake upside down and shook it. "Come on," she told it. "You've embarrassed yourself enough." "It's not coming out." "It has to." I told Hector he could use the pan at lunch. "We may have to bury them together." She ran a knife around the edge. Half the cake fell onto the table. The other half remained in the pan. Tessa inspected both pieces. Deconstructed. "You say that in front of Nolan and I'll fire you without authority." Lorraine came through with a produce invoice and took a broken corner. "This one's good." "It's raw in the middle," I said. "I like a moist cake." "It made a sound when you bit it." She chewed thoughtfully. "Needs cinnamon." Tessa pointed at her. "That's the feedback we've been missing." Lorraine took another piece before heading toward dry storage. "You're both welcome." The cake finally worked when I stopped trying to imitate butter cake. I poached the pears in rosemary syrup, reduced the poaching liquid, and folded it into a sorghum and rice batter with olive oil. The edges caramelized. The center stayed tender after cooling. It tasted like itself instead of an apology for something else. Nolan tried it during afternoon prep. He took one bite, then another. "Needs height," he said. "It's a cake, not a hotel." Individual rounds, pear fan on top, rosemary sugar. The sugar will pull moisture during the hold. Then we add it at service. That means another finishing step. That's why cooks have hands. He cut a third bite. Criticism never stopped Nolan from eating. "This goes into the client deck," he said. "Send me the formula." "It's already in the shared folder." "With your test notes?" "Yes. Clean those up. The approved formula is clean. I mean the comments. Collapsed like wet insulation, doesn't need to go to Ellery. That was trial 6. He looked at me. You named the file final. I named it pair_final_6. The approved one is pair_final_7. That is a hostile filing system. It makes sense if you read all the words. His mouth twitched before he could stop it. Nolan liked me most when he forgot I was causing him trouble. By the next morning, the approved file had been renamed Voss_Rosemary_pear_cake. The document properties listed him as author because he had copied the recipe into a new template. My test sheets remained in the binder. I said nothing. I took a screenshot and printed the original revision history. It felt petty until I slid it behind the corresponding sheet. Then it felt like sanitation, an unglamorous step that kept one mess from spreading. Priya returned for the first full production trial on a Tuesday when the ballroom was hosting a pharmaceutical sales meeting, and the main line already had 300 chicken breasts resting in rolling racks. A production trial during real service was different from feeding 4 people around a prep table. The freight elevator was late. Someone took my labeled saucepan for peppercorn gravy. A dishwasher stacked sesame dressing bottles on the allergy cart because both shelves had green tape. I moved the bottles, stripped the cart, sanitized it again, and changed the tape to orange. Nolan watched me do it. "We're 6 minutes behind," he said. "We were behind when I found sesame over the clean utensils." The bottles were closed. The caps were dirty. Then wiped them. I'm resetting the cart. Priya stood a few feet away, checking our hand-washing station. Nolan lowered his voice. "You don't have to perform caution for her." I met his eyes. "I'm not performing." Something changed in his face. Not anger, calculation. He turned toward the cooks and clapped once. "Listen up, orange tape is Ellery only. Nothing touches that card unless Mara clears it." It sounded as though the rule had become real when he said it. The trial went well because Nolan was excellent at service. He reorganized the plating line in under a minute, moved the cold garnish ahead of sauce, and caught a trout portion that was 2 ounces light without touching the scale. When the banquet captain reported an extra table, Nolan split the backup mise en place before anyone else had finished swearing. I hated how much easier it would have been if he were bad at his job. At the end of service, Priya opened the binder and reviewed the day's control sheet. "Who changed the cart tape?" she asked. "I did," I said. "Why orange? Green is already used for prepared dressings. Too easy to confuse during a rush." She wrote a note. "Good catch." Nolan was speaking with the banquet director, but his shoulders shifted slightly. Priya turned to the pear cake page. "This recipe in the presentation packet says almond extract." "It shouldn't," I said. Nolan crossed the space between us before I could reach for the packet. "That's from an early concept deck." "It's dated yesterday," Priya said. He glanced down. His recovery was smooth. "My assistant pulled the wrong version." Nolan did not have an assistant. Priya looked at me, then at the signed sheet inside the binder. "The kitchen formula is correct?" "Yes. Rosemary, pear, olive oil, no almond extract." "And production follows this binder?" "It does when I'm here." The words came out before caution could soften them. Nolan's gaze settled on me. Priya closed the binder. "It needs to follow the binder regardless of who's here." "Absolutely," Nolan said. "That's what I'm standardizing." On the walk back from the test kitchen, he asked me to join him in the service stairwell. It was the only place on the banquet level without cameras or someone peeling potatoes. "You made me look careless." The wrong recipe was in the packet. It was a concept ingredient. It was listed under the approved menu. And I corrected it. Priya caught it. His jaw moved once. "Do you know what I did while you were resetting one cart? I kept a 300-person lunch from going down 20 minutes late." "I know." "I'm trying to land an account that protects this entire department. You're trying to win every sentence. I'm trying to make sure the written menu matches the food. By telling the client the system only works when you're present? It doesn't work when someone puts the wrong recipe in the packet." He rested one hand on the rail. "You had an incident at the Kendrick." The stairwell seemed to shrink. I had never told him the guest's name or the details. Human Resources had transferred my employment record when Briarwood hired me. The write-up would have been there. "Yes. You understand how another executive chef might look at that history and think your caution has become fear. And you understand how Ellery might look at it and think I learned something. Maybe. Or they might think I assigned their program to a liability. There it was, the thing he could call up whenever I mistook responsibility for power." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I have protected you here." "From what?" "From people who don't understand why it takes you 4 extra days to approve a sauce. You mean you've explained the work you assigned me? I mean I've trusted you. You trust me with the risk. You just don't trust me with the credit." His face went still. Then he opened the stairwell door for me. "We're done." My name disappeared from the next Ellery meeting invitation that afternoon. The morning after that, Priya emailed a question about holding temperatures for the ragu. Nolan answered without copying me. His answer was almost correct. He gave the standard minimum, not the narrower range we had established to keep the rice flour from tightening. I forwarded the test sheet to both of them with one sentence. For this formula, maintain 145,155 degrees Fahrenheit during service. Priya replied, "Thank you, Mara." Nolan did not reply. My Friday banquet disappeared from the schedule. When I asked the staffing coordinator, she rotated her monitor toward me. "Chef changed assignments, you're on prep. Prep paid my base rate. Banquet service carried a share of the service charge. The difference on a large event could cover my car payment." He give a reason? She looked uncomfortable. Coverage needs. There were 3 cooks on the banquet who had never run an allergy station. I found Lorraine breaking down invoices in receiving. The little office smelled like cardboard and coffee that had cooked down too long on the burner. Nolan cut me from Friday service. She kept typing. "Did you ask him why? He called it coverage. Then you know why. I need you to pull the last 6 delivery logs for the Ellery ingredients." Her hand stopped over the keys. "Why?" "Because the test sheets reference your receiving numbers." "What are you building, Mara?" "A complete record." "That's not what I asked." I closed the office door. He changed the recipe files. He's putting his name on the menu and taking me out of the client meetings. Lorraine leaned back in her chair. Behind her, a calendar from Valenti Produce showed a field of tomatoes, too perfect to have traveled in a truck. You knew he'd lead the presentation. Leading isn't the same as claiming he developed it. You want me to say he's wrong? I want the logs. Mara, they're business records. I'm not asking you to steal anything. I didn't say you were. You used the voice. I have one voice. You have 40 voices. That was the one from the cafe when a creditor called. Her eyes sharpened. Leave the cafe out of this. You brought up protecting the department. Because people have jobs here. So do I. And you still have yours. On prep, while he sells my work. Lorraine looked toward the closed door, though no one could hear us over the receiving dock. When the cafe was failing, I spent 6 months being right about every invoice. Do you know what that got me? Debt. It got me a front row seat while the doors closed. This isn't your cafe. No, it's a paycheck, yours and mine. I waited for her to look at me. When she finally did, I saw fear wearing the clothes of practicality. I'll get the logs, she said. But you need to decide what you actually want, your name on a cake or a future here. I shouldn't have to trade one for the other. That doesn't mean the trade isn't being offered. She printed the records. Before handing them over, she squared the pages against the desk as if tidiness could make the exchange harmless. Friday night, I worked prep while Nolan served the first Ellery preview dinner upstairs. Tessa came down twice for things he had forgotten, the rosemary sugar and the separate container of charred scallion oil. The third time, she returned carrying an untouched sorghum roll on a bread plate. Their regional director wants the recipe, she said. Tell him to ask Chef Voss. I did. What happened? Nolan sent me to ask you. I looked at the roll. Tessa lowered her voice. He called it his grandmother's technique. His grandmother ground sorghum flour? Apparently, she was a pioneer. I laughed, which hurt more than staying angry. Then Tessa placed a folded menu card beside the bread plate. At the bottom, beneath Executive Chef Nolan Voss, the line that had read, Culinary Safety Development, Mara Bell was covered by a white label. Through the label, if I tilted the card toward the light, I could still see the shape of my name. On Monday, Nolan called the kitchen team together beside the dry storage shelves. 2 sample cartons sat on my prep table. Our oat supplier can't guarantee volume at the Ellery scale, he said. Procurement found a replacement. I picked up the first carton and turned it to the allergen panel. The product itself contained no tree nuts. Beneath the ingredients, in smaller print, it said the oat base was produced on shared equipment with cashews. Our core menu excludes tree nuts, I said. It's a facility statement, not an ingredient. It changes the risk classification. It changes a sentence on a carton. Priya's specification required dedicated equipment verification for every core menu substitute. Nolan knew that. I knew he knew it, because his initials were on the email. He slid a new approval sheet toward me. We need the lower cost to make the numbers work, he said. Run a taste comparison and sign off by tomorrow. I left the sheet where it was. I can run the test, I said. I can't approve this for the core menu. The cooks around us became interested in knives, towels, anything that kept their eyes down. Nolan's voice stayed calm. You haven't tested it. The allergen statement isn't a flavor problem. It meets federal labeling requirements. That isn't Ellery's requirement. I'm not asking Ellery, I'm asking my sous-chef. I looked at the blank signature line. Then I pushed the sheet back across the steel. You're asking the wrong one. Nolan looked at the sheet between us. Then he looked at the cooks. Everyone back to work. Pan started moving before he finished the sentence. Tessa took the oat cartons to the dry storage shelf but left the approval sheet on the table. Nolan waited until the kitchen had regained enough noise to give us privacy. The replacement saves $8,000 over the contract year, he said. Then use it in dishes that aren't represented as tree nut controlled. That removes it from 4 sauces and both desserts. Yes, we've already priced those recipes. I can rebuild them with rice cream, which adds labor. Less than a failed audit. His nostrils widened slightly. We don't fail audits over voluntary facility language. Ellery's specification says dedicated equipment. I know what the specification says. Then why are we arguing? Because specifications get negotiated by adults who understand cost. There was no useful response to that, only satisfying ones. I picked up the approval sheet, drew a line through the signature box, and wrote, Not approved for Ellery core menu. Shared cashew equipment. Under it, I signed my name and dated it. Nolan watched me put the sheet into the binder. You enjoy making this difficult. I enjoy making it clear. Those aren't the same thing. No, difficult would be serving it first and explaining it later. He dismissed me with a small tilt of his head. At noon, my access to the Ellery recipe folder stopped working. I called IT because hope sometimes looks like stupidity. The technician clicked for a while, then said, Your permission group changed. Who changed it? Chef Voss requested a restricted project team. I am the project team. A pause. I can't help with that part. Tessa still had access. She stood beside me in the pastry corner while I tried to open one file after another and watched the error messages appear. You can use my login, she said. No. He took your name off the cards. Why are you protecting his computer rule? Because the first time he finds my work under your login, this becomes about unauthorized access instead of stolen work. She pushed her lower lip forward, thinking, I hate when you're sensible in a boring way. I can be reckless after lunch. At 2, Nolan called Tessa into his office. She was gone 23 minutes. I knew because I spent every one of them turning pear cakes out of their pans without checking the clock more than 9 times. When she came back, she tied her apron twice. What did he want? He asked me to take acting sous-chef duties on Ellery. The cake in my hand tilted. You said yes. I said I'd run service. That means yes. It means you're on prep and somebody has to make sure he doesn't garnish the trout with almond brittle. He offered you my work. He offered me a title I've been doing without. The answer was sharp enough to be honest. I set the cake down. Tessa crossed her arms. I can need something for myself and still know he's screwing you. I didn't say you couldn't. Your face did. My face has poor management skills. She stared at the floor drain. He wants me to sign the oat substitution. There was the price hidden inside the promotion. What did you tell him? That I didn't run the tests. And he said signing means I reviewed the documents, not that I developed them. He's wrong. I know. Did you sign? Her eyes came up. No. Some of the air returned to the room. Tessa picked at flour dried on her sleeve. He told me not to confuse loyalty with career planning. That's a very Nolan sentence. Is he right? About which part? Can I do this without betraying you? I wanted to say no. The word arrived hot and complete. It would have been easy to make her choose, especially after weeks of being chosen against. Instead, I said, run the service. Don't sign work you didn't do. Don't repeat anything you can't prove. That sounds like 3 rules. It's 1 rule with garnish. She nodded. Structural garnish? I laughed despite myself. The next day, Priya found the oat sheet behind the approved cake formula. She read my note, checked the carton, and asked Nolan for the supplier verification letter. He told her procurement was obtaining it. We aren't, I said. He turned slowly. Priya looked between us. Why not? The supplier confirmed shared cashew equipment by email. I haven't seen that email, Nolan said. I forwarded it yesterday to an account I can't access anymore. Priya closed the carton. This product isn't used for Ellery until I approve the supplier documentation. Nolan's smile held, but only at the edges. Agreed. She returned the sheet to the binder. Then she removed a packet of red adhesive tabs from her bag and marked the trout, ragu, cake, sanitation, and substitution records. Graham will review these at the final tasting. Graham? Nolan asked. Our food safety auditor. I thought you were signing off. I'm validating development. Graham reviews production controls and contract compliance. She turned to the contents page and wrote the sheet range beside each red tab. At the bottom, she added 42 numbered pages reviewed, then signed her name. Nolan's eyes moved from the notation to me. For once, I had done nothing but stand there. After Priya left, he took the binder to his office. I followed him. It stays in the kitchen. It's my kitchen. It's Ellery's official production binder. And I'm reviewing it. You can review it at the station. He set it on his desk. You're done telling me where I can put a binder. Priya documented 42 pages. I can count. So can Graham. That earned me a look stripped of charm. You've made your point. I haven't made anything. Those are the tests. You've created a narrative where you are the only competent person in this building. No, I created a record where I'm the person who developed the formulas. And what happens if I decide you're no longer suitable for the program? The record stays true. His fingers rested on the gray cover. This contract is bigger than your feelings, so stop risking it for yours. He stood. The conversation ended with me suspended. The official notice called it insubordination, misuse of client documentation, and repeated failure to follow executive direction. Human Resources said the suspension was temporary pending review. Nolan said almost nothing. He sat beside the HR manager with his hands folded and looked disappointed in me, which was more effective than looking angry. I asked whether the disputed oat product had been approved. The HR manager said, "This meeting is about your conduct." That answers me. Mara. Nolan said softly. He used the tone people use when someone is making a scene. I was seated. My voice had not risen. I signed the notice only after writing received, not agreed above my name. When I cleaned out my locker, the blue grease pencil was in my apron pocket. The binder remained in Nolan's office. Lorraine drove me home because I didn't trust myself to sit behind a wheel. For 3 blocks, she said nothing. Then she asked, "How long?" "Pending review." "How long does that mean?" "They didn't say." "And pay?" "No." She gripped the steering wheel. "You have rent due." "I know." "Car payment." "I know." "Your insurance comes out of payroll." "I know, Mom." Do not snap at me because you wanted to be brave in a kitchen. I turned toward the window. The city moved past in loading docks, brick walls, and restaurant vents, streaked black above their fans. You think this was brave? I think you wanted him to force your hand. I wanted him to follow the specification. You wanted him to admit what he did. That, too. And now? Now he has my menu, my files, and the binder. She glanced over. I thought the binder was official. It is. Then he can't throw it out. He can make my life look unstable around it. Lorraine pulled into the small lot behind my apartment and put the car in park. I can cover part of your rent. With what? My savings. You don't have savings. You have cafe debt with a decorative cushion. That is still my business. No, it becomes my business when you offer it to me. She looked older in the gray light, not weak, just tired in places makeup had once distracted from. Come stay with me, she said, until this settles. I'm not moving back into your spare room. It has a bed. It has 12 boxes of cafe plates. 11, I gave one to the church supper. I can't pay you rent. You can cook. For you, that's punitive. Her mouth trembled into a reluctant smile. I moved in 6 days later. Giving up my apartment cost less than keeping it through an open-ended suspension, but the arithmetic didn't soften the humiliation. Tessa helped carry boxes. She brought tape from the hotel and crossed out Briarwood property on every roll before using it. Ethics, she said. Lorraine's spare room smelled faintly of cardboard and the cinnamon oil she put on dryer balls. The cafe plates were stacked against one wall, heavy white rounds with green rims, too sturdy to break and too expensive to throw away. My mother stood in the doorway while I cleared space for clothes. I kept thinking I'd sell them. To whom? Somebody opening a place. That person has enough problems. She picked up one plate and rubbed her thumb over a chip in the rim. When the cafe started losing money, your father wanted to cut dinner service. I said dinner was our identity. I had heard versions of this before, usually with numbers attached. He was right, she said. I looked at her. Lorraine almost never gave ground to an empty room, let alone another person. I knew he was right, she continued. But if I agreed, then all those years of being the dinner place felt wasted. So I kept buying food we couldn't sell. I blamed vendors. I blamed the street construction. I blamed him for not believing enough. She put the plate back carefully. I'm not saying Nolan's right. It sounds nearby. I'm saying people can get dangerous when facts make them feel smaller. I sat on the edge of the bed. What do you want me to do? I don't know. That's new. I hate it. The next morning, Lorraine went to work and I stayed in her house wearing old sweatpants, trying not to calculate how much money I had lost by 10 o'clock. At 11:15, Tessa texted, "He put the oat product on the prep pull." I called her. "Is it for Ellery?" "It's listed for the final tasting sauces. Did you sign anything?" "No." He asked again. "What did he say when you refused?" "That acting titles can end." I closed my eyes. "Take a picture of the pull sheet for yourself. Don't send it to me." "Why not?" "Because I'm suspended and he'll say I'm directing staff." "You are directing staff. I'm telling you to protect your own record." That sounds like directing with extra words. "Welcome to management." She went quiet. "Priya's coming tomorrow." Then answer what she asks. What if Nolan tells me not to? You already know the answer. That afternoon, Lorraine came home with a folded receiving copy in her purse. She laid it on the kitchen table between us. The replacement oat product had arrived the previous Thursday. The date on the typed receiving record was Monday before my refusal. Beside the changed date was a blank space where receiving initials should have been. He asked me to initial it, she said. Why was the date changed? He said the sample had been in purchasing since Monday, so that was the effective delivery date. Was it? No. What did you say? I said I only initial what crosses my dock. I touched the unsigned box. He'll find someone else. Maybe. Did you make a copy before giving it back? She nodded toward the page. For the first time since my suspension, my mother did not ask whether being right was worth the cost. She just said, "Where does this belong?" In the binder. The binder in his office. Yes. Lorraine folded the sheet along its existing crease. Then I guess I'm going to need him to open his door. Lorraine did not storm into Nolan's office. Storming was my style when I was frightened. My mother preferred paperwork. She arrived at 6, processed the normal deliveries, rejected a case of bruised nectarines, and waited until Priya came for her scheduled review. Then she carried the receiving copy upstairs in a clear document sleeve. Tessa called me from the walk-in. "Your mom just asked Nolan to return the binder to the kitchen." What did he say? He said he was reviewing proprietary materials. The binder isn't proprietary. Your mom said that. How? Like she was informing him his fish smelled. I sat down at Lorraine's kitchen table. What's Priya doing? Watching. Put the binder at my station if he gives it back. I'm not moving anything with him in the room. Tessa. I have an acting title, not a death wish. A door closed on her end. I have to go. She disconnected. 20 minutes later, Priya called me. I understand you're suspended, she said. That's what the letter says. For refusing the oat substitution? The letter says insubordination. What do you say? I refused the substitution. Then I told Nolan the development records had to remain with the official binder. He says you removed confidential client material. I moved the binder from his office to the kitchen station twice. It never left the property. And the test pages are yours? I filled them out. They belong to the program. She was quiet for a few seconds. Graham needs the person who signed them, present for the final tasting. Then Nolan should have thought about that before suspending me. I believe that thought has recently occurred to him. I looked at the cafe plates stacked against the dining room wall. Are you asking me to come in? I'm telling Briarwood that your participation is required for validation. How they arrange it is their problem. Will the replacement oat product be used? No. The answer came cleanly. Then I'll attend if they reinstate me for the day, pay my normal rate, and put in writing that I'm there to answer Graham's questions without Nolan screening my responses. You've been thinking about this. I've had free time. Human Resources called before lunch. The same manager who had watched me sign my suspension now described the situation as a temporary client-driven assignment. I corrected her until she called it a paid reinstatement pending review. You'll report to Chef Voss for kitchen operations, she said, not for audit responses. The client has requested direct access to relevant employees. Put that in the email. Mara, we're trying to get you back in the building. I know, put it in the email. She did. Nolan called 10 minutes later. I let it ring once, then answered. You got what you wanted, he said. I'm coming to the tasting. That isn't what I meant. I know. His breath moved softly over the microphone. We need to present a unified team. Which version? This doesn't have to stay ugly. It wasn't ugly when my name was on the work. I can restore the development credit in the internal file, internal, and recommend you for culinary development manager when the contract activates. Recommend. You want guarantees I'm not authorized to give. You were authorized to remove me from the schedule. That was an operational decision. So was my rent. He paused. I know you've taken a financial hit. The gentleness in his voice made me angrier than cruelty would have. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "Help me land this. Once the account is secure, we fix the rest." "When?" "Mara." "A date." "You know, hotels don't work that way. Records do." He exhaled through his nose. "What are you asking for?" "Restored lost wages, a formal menu development title, written credit on Ellery's materials, authority to reject substitutions that fail the client specification." "You want veto power." "Over the sheets I'm expected to sign. I can't run a kitchen where a sous-chef overrules the executive chef. Then sign them yourself." He did not answer. The next morning, I arrived through the employee entrance wearing clean whites and carrying only my knife roll. My locker had been reassigned, so I changed my shoes beside the time clock. Tessa found me there. Her acting sous-chef coat was half a size too large. The shoulders made her look like she had borrowed authority from a wider person. "You came back?" "For the day." She hugged me before I could decide whether we were hugging. Then she stepped away and smoothed her coat. That was workplace inappropriate. "Write yourself up." "I'm management now. I'll bury it." We walked to the test kitchen. The gray binder sat at my old station. Priya's red tabs still marked the same 5 sections. Lorraine's receiving copy had been added behind the oat substitution sheet, numbered 43. Beside the blank initial line, she had written, "Delivered Thursday, not Monday. Date correction declined." My blue grease pencil lay in the binder rings. I picked it up. "Your mom brought it herself," Tessa said. "Nolan told her purchasing had authority to establish the effective date." "What did she say?" "Boxes don't become food until receiving receives them." "That sounds like her." She also asked him if he wanted her to explain docs. I slid the pencil into my sleeve pocket. The tasting started at 11. Ellery sent 12 people: regional operations, culinary leadership, retreat managers Priya and Graham Sloan, whose gray suit looked built to resist sauces. Nolan greeted each person by name. He remembered who drank sparkling water and who had mentioned hiking during the preliminary meetings. He placed the regional director where the natural light hit the cedar presentation boards. Watching him work, I understood why ownership wanted him to win. Nolan could turn logistics into theater. The smoked glass cloches had cost almost nothing. But when the servers lifted them together, cider vapor rolled across the trout like weather. He described charred apple, rosemary, and the discipline of removing ingredients without removing pleasure. My discipline. His sentence. The trout landed perfectly. The ragu held at 150 degrees, glossy without tightening. Tessa ran the line with orange tape wrapped around the handles of dedicated utensils. When a server reached toward the wrong garnish, she blocked him with her elbow and redirected his hand without interrupting plating. I let Nolan speak. He presented the sorghum roll as the result of his interest in heritage grains. He called the pear cake a study in restraint. He explained that the menu's simplicity came from knowing exactly what could be removed. The regional director asked, "How long did development take?" 14 weeks, Nolan said. "My team worked hard." "That ragu is remarkable. Was it your formula?" Nolan smiled. "Every plate starts with my concept." Then he pointed his carving knife toward me. She only chopped what I told her. The laugh arrived first. Applause followed, warm and brief. Tessa's hand stopped over the scallion oil. Priya looked down at her notes. I held Nolan's gaze and said, "The pear cake is ready." He turned back to the clients. Exactly, timing. I plated all 12 portions. I let him present every allergy-safe course because by then, credit was the smallest question waiting in the room. Graham finished half his cake, set down his fork, and asked for the production controls. Nolan gestured toward the gray binder beside him. "Everything is documented." Graham pulled it closer. The clear sleeves crackled as he opened the cover. He checked Priya's notation on the contents page, then turned to the first red tab. The blue signature waited at the bottom of the trout sheet. Mara Bell, banquet sous-chef. "Chef Voss," Graham said. "Why is Mara Bell's signature on your development record?" I delegated technical testing. Graham turned the page. My signature. Another page. My signature beneath Priya's. The entire menu, I created the concepts. Mara executed trials under my direction. Graham looked toward me. Ms. Bell, is that accurate? Nolan's shoulders stayed relaxed, only his right hand changed, curling slightly against the table. He gave me an initial concept packet, I said. I developed the approved formulas and controls. Under his direction? He gave feedback on flavor and presentation. Graham tapped the trout page. Why are there 6 glazed trials? Nolan wanted brown butter depth in a dairy-free sauce. Apple peel gave me bitterness and toasted notes, but the first reductions broke during holding. Trial 6 balanced the cider reduction with charred peel stock. Why does the presentation recipe call it a brown butter cider glaze? You'd have to ask the person who wrote the presentation recipe. The regional director stopped smiling. Graham moved to the ragu. Why ground jasmine rice? The purchased flour was too fine. It scorched before it developed enough flavor. The coarser house grind toasted evenly and stayed stable between 145 and 155. Nolan said, which was my temperature target. Graham scanned the trial pages. Your email says 145 minimum. Nolan leaned toward the page. That's standard hot holding guidance. The documented test range is narrower. He turned to Tessa. Who followed the range during today's service? We did, she said. Mara's range. What is your role? Acting sous-chef for Ellery Production. Did you participate in development? I assisted Mara. Nolan's eyes moved to her. Graham asked, did Chef Voss ask you to approve any test documents? Tessa swallowed. Yes. Which ones? The oat substitution. Did you approve it? No, I didn't run the test, and the product didn't meet the dedicated equipment specification. A retreat manager opened her copy of the menu packet. Was that product used today? Priya answered. I prohibited it. Graham found the next red tab. The approval sheet showed my refusal. Behind it sat Lorraine's receiving copy. Who is L? Belle? My mother stepped forward from the receiving doorway. I am. Why was the delivery date changed? You'd have to ask purchasing. It crossed my dock Thursday. Nolan's voice sharpened. The sample was on property Monday. In the purchasing office, Lorraine said. Food becomes inventory at my dock. I don't initial a carton I haven't inspected. Graham compared the supplier code on the carton record with my test sheet. Who established this chain of custody procedure? Lorraine looked at me. She did. The room grew quiet in a different way than it had after Nolan's joke. Graham closed the binder halfway. I need a break before we discuss approval. Nolan asked to speak to me in the service corridor. The moment the door shut, his composure split. You rehearsed this. I answered questions. You coordinated Priya, Tessa, and your mother. I couldn't coordinate lunch from my mother's spare room. You made me look like I don't understand my own menu. You don't understand this menu. I understand how to sell it. Without me, it's 6 failed glazes and a stack of forms. Without those forms, you just tried to sell Ellery a story. He stared at me. Then his voice dropped. If this contract fails, people lose hours. Renovations disappear. Tessa loses that coat. Your mother keeps unloading trucks in a kitchen that's falling apart. Do you feel good about that? No. The answer surprised him. I wanted us to win it, I said. I still do. Then help me. I did, for 14 weeks. The tasting resumed without another course. Ellery did not reject the menu. Graham withheld operational approval until Briarwood submitted a corrective plan identifying who held authority over allergen controls. The regional director said the contract could proceed if the person who developed the system remained accountable and could not be overruled for cost alone. Ownership began its review that afternoon. Nolan kept his executive chef job while they investigated the altered files, scheduling decisions, and receiving record. He lost the Ellery program and the regional promotion. For 2 weeks, he worked from the main kitchen while another chef handled client meetings. When we passed, he spoke to me only about service. Human Resources withdrew my suspension and offered my old position back with lost base pay. I declined. Their second offer restored the banquet income I had lost, named me culinary safety and menu development chef, credited me on the Ellery account, and gave me written approval authority over allergen substitutions. I asked for Tessa as operations sous-chef. They agreed. Lorraine read the offer twice at her kitchen table. "You're asking for too much moving money," she said. "I'm staying until I can afford a place I like." She tried to hide her smile inside her coffee. At the first Ellery retreat dinner, the gray binder sat open beneath the pass. Tessa signed the production sheet after checking the holding temperatures. Lorraine added her receiving initials beside the supplier lot. I signed last. The blue grease pencil had worn flat on one side, so my name came out broader than before. I set it inside the rings and pushed the binder toward the light.